Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Facts on the Ground. I am Misty Winston, and I am joined, as always, by my co host, Jesse Zerwell. Today, we have a very special guest, very important guest. This is an issue that we've been talking about a lot, something that is getting worse by the day, that we need to continue to speak about because the censorship that's going on right now against independent media, I've likened it to sanctions on independent media. It is really getting intense. So today we have Kit Cabello, who is the host of Hard Lens Media. Their channel on YouTube was just impacted by some just ridiculousness. We're going to get into how ridiculous it is. But Kit, thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been making the rounds, so I appreciate you taking time to, kind of check in with us and tell us what's been going on.
Well, first, I want to thank all of your viewers and you two as well for having me on your show. Again, my name is Kit Cabello. I'm the host of Hard Lens Media, and we are very grateful and thankful for all this, coverage that we're getting. Seriously, we do appreciate all the support from everyone that's been sharing our story, retweeting what happened to Hard Lens Media. We're really humbled by this.
So can you tell us, I know you've been making the rounds, so to speak, talking about what happened, but can you detail for us and our viewers what happened to Hard Lens Media's channel?
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to. Again, I kind of mentioned this on Jimmy Dore's show, and I went into more detail with on Case Study QB, Frank Analysis, and a Slow News Day with Steve Poikman. But, I just want to just reiterate because two separate incidents happened to us here at Hard Lens Media. The first one was our shadow ban, and I've talked about this before on the show as well, where between March of 2020 to September of 2020, a lot of our viewers are being unsubscribed. Now, we don't have the power to unsubscribe people. No one does. I mean, maybe you have to have a special rank in YouTube, but I digress, off topic. But all of our content was demonetized, and this was between March of 2020 to September of 2020. Now, somehow things got rectified and we were able to get our channel back. And since then, our channel has been growing. Now, the incident that took place, it happened on March 4th. I just got done doing a recorded interview with Susie Dawson, who's the host of Panquake, or co-founder of Panquake. And it was about 30 minutes long, and our editor, FaZe, was finishing editing the content until he called me and Daniel to the board where we conduct all of our video work and set up to go live. And he pointed out, FaZe pointed out that we have been suspended. And our suspension is about 1 week. Now, YouTube, we posted some of the screenshots on our Twitter page, but YouTube also sent us another link as well. And Daniel pointed this out. He sent me this email. But basically, the video is about the Biden inauguration. And the video is titled, Biden is in charge, Biden is president. And the community guidelines strike that we received, the top description is for denying the legitimacy of the election. So basically, YouTube's blind attack dog basically bit us. But here's the thing. Not once in that video did me or Daniel Upker or any of our co-hosts and any of our older content say that Biden is not president. And I'm just going to say this here. Biden is the 46th president. You don't have to like him. You don't have to respect him, or you could like him or whatever. Point is, he is the president. Now, we've never did any of this coverage of the election fraud. Other channels have done that. Now, do we need election integrity in this country? Absolutely. Should all elections be investigated and thoroughly counted, all votes counted? Absolutely. However, at the end of the day, in this video that's 2 months old, me and Daniel never said that Biden is not president. No one in Hard Lens Media has ever said that Biden is not president. But yet YouTube's community guidelines strike that we got, the top description is for denying Biden the presidency. And that's not what happened at all. And we have been trying to reach out to Team YouTube, and we have heard nothing. We've tried to rectify the situation, and this suspension is unjust and unfair.
It absolutely is. And I think that, it's really important to point out, obviously not to minimize what happened to Hard Lens Media, but this is happening all over the place all the time. It's happening to Convo Couch and Frank Analysis and Nico and even people I don't like who have made like horrible videos about me. Like they're being like their shit is being demonetized, and this is such a widespread issue that is really floating it's kind of interesting right underneath the surface, and nobody's really paying attention to it. I think because, you know, free speech, we've kind of talked about this before, it's very abstract for people. It doesn't really, it's not in their face every day, like maybe their lack of access to healthcare or whatever. That's because that's a very like pressing need. But you know, the attacks on free speech are more abstract. It's not in your face, and they've really just been like chipping away at it. And this is just another way that they're doing that exact thing. And they're just trying to shut up independent media at this point. And they don't want to just like outright, you know, start banning people or whatever. So it really is like, you know, demonetizing people, or, you know, like suspending you guys. It's an attack on your livelihood. And if you can't make a living doing what you're doing, do you know what I mean? So that's why I've likened it to sanctions. You know, can you kind of talk about your view on the wider spread issue of censorship, and how it really is like just something that's floating under the radar that people aren't talking about?
First, I just want to say, and I know right now I have a calm demeanor, but since Thursday, I've been enraged, very furious, and slowly I've been calming down, because this has hurt our livelihood at Hard Limbs Media. Our YouTube channel really helps us keep our studio afloat. We have our own studio space, and that's something we worked 3 years to get on our own. Not dealing with radio managers, not dealing with anyone with TV, just it's us who run it. And Hard Lens Media, that YouTube channel, really contributes a lot. And before I answer your question, you know, I just wanted to state that when we were shadow banned between March of 2020 to September of 2020, we were very careful with how we title our videos, how we make our thumbnails, and what stories we put out. Now, again, we're kind of self-censoring ourselves. Anything controversial goes down to Rockfin.
Weren't you very open about that though? Like didn't you, like that was like a conscious decision that you made? Like we're going to tell our viewers that, hey, on YouTube, this is what you're going to get. If you really want like the actual stuff, go to Rockfin. I mean, that was like a decision you made, right? Because I wanted to, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I thought that was
speaks
amazing.
Speaks volumes about what kind of platform YouTube has become.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to, there's so much to talk about with you, my friend.
Okay, so
really.
So let's, before we talk about Rockfin, because again, to your point, we have been very upfront with our audience. We told them our YouTube channel is different than our Rockfin channel. Our Rockfin channel is different than our YouTube channel. Now, to your point about freedom of speech, I am pro freedom of speech. I do not want any content creator to go through what we're going through. What happened to Nico House, Convo Couch, Frank Analysis, Jackson Hickle, Richard Medhurst, Ford Fisher, Graham Elwood, the Progressive Soapbox, Status Quo. You know, I don't want to see these channels get demonetized or their videos taken down.
Rachel Blevins, I don't know if you remember from a few years back, she had her, I think it was her Facebook account, which was pretty heavily followed. I think she had that suddenly deleted,
and I don't want to
lost everything. And I think she's with RT now, but
yeah, she is.
But see, I don't want to see that happen to anyone. And at the same time, point, and I named a couple of progressive channels, independent channels, but I don't want to see this happen to a libertarian channel. And I don't want to see this happen to a Republican channel or a conservative channel. Now, are there people who abuse freedom of speech, who use it for hate speech or ignorance or conspiracy theories? The answer is yes, and that's going to keep on happening. But censoring people or removing them out or putting them in safe spaces or silencing people or putting them in an echo chamber will only make the problem worse. I believe, and I said this on all the other shows, I believe that the world is filled with good people. I believe that. That is a belief that I have. And how do we beat hate speech? How do we beat ignorant speech? With intelligent speech and compassionate speech. But if you start deplatforming people, like what our Congress is so super happy to do, especially after January 6th, when you remove Trump, you think that's going to make him and his 75+ million volunteers disappear overnight? The answer is no. They're still around. And so how do we keep on pushing forward? Well, people, good people, speaking out against those who are spreading ignorance. But the thing is, when Trump and his crew and a lot of conservatives and Republicans were being deplatformed off of Twitter and so many other social media platforms, what happened next? They went after the progressives. They went after all the progressive channels, all the progressive commentators. Now, look, everyone runs their channel differently. Everyone runs their show differently, and they have the right to do so. So long as they're being responsible as journalists and speaking truth to power, keep on doing it. Keep on fighting back. Keep on fighting the good fight. But the way these tech giants are acting, it once again reaffirms my belief that the internet should be a public utility. These social media platforms should be public utilities. And we need respect freedom of speech. If we don't, no one will be able to speak out. And it's only going to be the corporations that will have the narrative. And I think we all know how that's going right now.
Right. And Misty made the comparison to sanctions against online platforms. And I agree with that. But I also think there's a very strong whiff of COINTELPRO as pertains what's happening, in that these tech companies are out to disrupt and discredit and destroy, neutralize independent media. And your Hardlands Media is but one example of that. And I'd just like to go back to the point you made about when people were cheering on the deplatforming of conservatives. It brings to mind a song lyric, "Be careful what kind of world you wish for. Someday it may come knocking at your door." And that's exactly what we've been seeing. And did you have any interaction with any person, any actual voice at YouTube to get replatformed, if you will?
That's a very good question. My colleague Daniel Lupker, he takes care of a lot of the inside business at the studio, and we have tried to reach out to YouTube, and so far nothing but radio silence. And this is really devastating for us because as a YouTube channel, the whole idea of having a successful channel is uploading continuous content. Now, that's a difficult thing for a lot of content creators to do. And we at Hardlands Media managed to get a good formula down in regards towards uploading, doing live streams, doing special interviews. And this whole week will hurt our channel, will hurt our income, and will hurt our studio. So no, we have not heard anything from anyone from YouTube. And now, again, anything can happen right now after this interview. Again, I have my phone on silence, but I'm pretty sure Daniel will be the first one to tell me, hey, YouTube rectified the decision. And if that happens now or tomorrow, great. But the danger is still there. And the sad fact is, with YouTube not communicating with content creators, especially in independent media, well, a lot of their viewers and subscribers are going to wonder, what happened to this channel? Where can I find them? And this censorship isn't just impacting independent media. It's going after other content creators of other genres. And I think we've all seen similar stories where, they might be giving their opinion about a movie or a comic book or something else altogether. It doesn't matter. The point is, a lot of content creators now, no matter what the genre there is, they are at risk of being deplatformed and censored. And I don't want to see that. Now, if someone's abusing freedom of speech, if someone's being hateful or really saying some horrible things, well, then they should be confronted via social media and people saying, hey, you're wrong about this. You're wrong about this. How dare you spill this vile hatred? I mean, it's got to be a special kind of hatred too, because everyone's going to post some ignorant thing on social media. I mean, there's no stopping that either. But censorship is not the answer. Deplatforming and suspending or shadow banning is not the answer. And YouTube, its responsibility now will have to be hiring more people and not rely on their blind attack dogs.
Yeah, I can tell you, okay, so I'm a true crime nerd, and the true crime channels on YouTube are constantly demonetized. They talk about some dark shit, and that is all the time labeled as not suitable for advertisers or whatever. And, you're right. It is like, it's not just, political commentators or independent media. It really, like, YouTube is a hot fucking mess. It really is. It's a hot mess. And, I think that's what makes other platforms like Rockfin so important, because YouTube is not viable anymore for really anybody at this point. It really is kind of insane but what really is terrible, and it would be cool if we could just kind of take over YouTube and nationalize it, and because it is kind of a great video platform service.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of good work.
I don't even know what the answer is to this, because it seems like YouTube has this monopoly, and like Odyssey is great too. You don't have to sign up for Odyssey, all of your, so I mean, what do you think about the viability of other platforms being able to kind of take the place of YouTube, and us being able to transition to like a more decentralized method of obtaining information and news and all of that stuff?
First, I'm all in favor of other platforms rising up. But I want to be clear, YouTube has been in this game for quite some time, and it's something a lot of people are familiar with. If something like Odyssey or even Rockfin, and we'll talk about Rockfin in a little bit, are able to step up, I mean, it's going to take some time, but there is potential there. I want to have belief that there can be something else different than YouTube. And unfortunately, YouTube is a platform where a lot of people go, but it's becoming so corporate friendly. I remember a time, let's say when in 2008, when I went to YouTube, and you would see on the trending page, actual people, content creators who are trending, who are putting up their original content. Now, when you go on YouTube, you see Jimmy Fallon, you see Jimmy Kimmel, you see Fox News, you see CNN, CBS. And the thing is, I left TV to go to the internet to watch better content. A lot of the shows I watch are not on television anymore. They're on, the internet, and they're done by people, content creators who are working their butts off to make really good stuff, but yet they're not being promoted by YouTube. They're not on the trending page on YouTube, and it's a shame, because these corporations used to look down at YouTube. So for Odyssey and Rockfin, they have to keep on promoting themselves. They have to keep on pushing forward, and I believe that there is potential with both those platforms, but they have to keep on growing. And I, for one, am in full support of seeing something much different than YouTube, because if YouTube keeps doing this, eventually there's going to be a breaking point where people are going to be leaving it.
Right. And I think at this point, we're starting to see the first cracks of that breaking point. But I also believe that if people are genuinely hungry for knowledge, for nuanced insights on what's happening in the world, that they'll find it, as long as it's out there, even if it's buried somewhere on YouTube or if it's on Rockfin.
Yeah.
But and I trust in that, but that's still not enough, and it still doesn't deal with these Silicon Valley monoliths like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and this unchecked power they have over all of us and our content, and the power to, like you said, basically take away a week's income. And I don't see, just looking back at when Mark Zuckerberg testified before Congress, and I forget which congressperson it was, they asked him how Facebook makes their money. I don't see how Congress, which apparently doesn't understand these platforms, how they're going to be able to do anything to reel them in, especially when these companies are also contributing to their campaigns. So I think it's we're fucked in a sense.
I still want to hold on to the glimmer of hope, and because again, we're asking people, especially for Heartlands Media right now, to politely on Twitter say, hey, Team YouTube, hey, YouTube creators, Team YouTube, reverse your decision. You made a mistake, and their algorithm made a mistake. We want to talk to somebody from YouTube so we can rectify this decision. The suspension that we have is unjust. And, just kind of bringing it back to this again, We never said anything negative about President Biden. We never said that he wasn't president. The title of the video is Biden is in charge, Biden's a president. And the video is about the inauguration. I mean, all
But
these
even
little
if you had said that, you're still allowed to say that.
You're allowed to say that.
That's the case. But the point is, sadly, YouTube has to change its policies, especially how they're going after content creators. Now, for Rockfin, you know, because you brought up Rockfin, when we started to upload content there, we decided to make it the place to where we can, you know, upload controversial stories, talk about controversial individuals, it's just been a crazy road for us to be down, and you know, just I'm just happy that Rockfin is able to acknowledge its creators, because we're speaking to real people. We're speaking to real human beings, and whenever there's anything happening on Rockfin, we get an email from somebody from Rockfin, not a bot. And it's been a very interesting treatment that we're getting compared to what we're getting on YouTube, which is nothing but silence. So, you know, kind of bring up to another point that you brought up. Is there an alternative? I think there is hope. I think there's potential in Rockfin. I think there's potential in Odyssey. I think there's potential in Panquake. I think, you know, more people need to start looking at how we make something so that we're not constantly censored by the big tech corporations.
Yeah, I guess I want to clarify what I said as far as us being fucked. That's with regard to the big tech corporations, YouTube,
Yeah,
Twitter.
we are in a really
etc.
bad spot. I don't think that that's an unfair statement to make. But I did also want to ask you about, I mean, we've kind of hinted around it, but there is this element of self-censorship too. And I think that we see that consistently in independent media. I mean, you know, you have lefty media, you know, gaslighting for Joe Biden, or, you know, interviewing Madeleine Albright, or, you know, whatever. So, and you also have people refusing to talk about, you know, seriously important issues like Julian Assange. And that's on independent, like the independent media circuit. Nobody really wants to touch that issue. So I wanted to get your take on, you know, how, and it's not, we should make clear, it's not just YouTube. You know, Rockfin's pretty great, but there's censorship across multiple platforms. Patreon, PayPal, all of these things are also components of what we're talking about, because that is a form of censorship as well. It's a form of, again, I know it's kind of dramatic, but sort of economic sanctions against independent media. And that's, I just need to remind people again, one of the first things that they did to WikiLeaks was ban them from financial and fundraising mechanisms. They were cut off from PayPal. They were all of those things. So, which is actually what made them get into crypto so early on. But this is something that they always do. And so it really is like a much bigger issue than it's really even possible to fathom. But the level of self-censorship that I think that brings on, I wanted to get your kind of take on that, and what you think, what you've seen in independent media, and how you think it's affecting the kind of information that we're getting, because it really is just about narrative control in whatever way they can manufacture that. So does that make sense?
So here's my take. Because when it comes down to stories like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, or even talking about that disgusting bastard Epstein, YouTube is quick to demonetize or remove those videos as quick as possible. But sadly, you know, it seems to be the smaller independent media networks that are talking about Julian Assange, that are talking about his freedom. I want him to be free. He's been tortured enough. Same thing with Edward Snowden. While he's not being tortured, he is in exile. He should come home. He's an American hero. He hasn't done anything wrong, and you know, and what really bothers me is that when Edward Snowden or Julian Assange are covered, or when we do see them on the internet, it is by, again, the major corporate media, and they're spinning their narrative about him, while yet us in the independent media circuit who are talking about him, our videos are like dragged at the bottom. We're more in the back page, in regards to getting the real truth about Julian Assange out there to the people. And then when you have larger platforms that kind of smear Julian Assange, who claim to be progressive or rarely talk about him, that's devastating too, because again, you have this large platform, and some of these YouTube channels have about either 5 million or 1 million subscribers. And I think I think we all know which two platforms I'm talking about. But the fact that they're not talking about him is really sad. But at the same time too, we have to be careful on our channel now, because, you know, if we do bring up Julian Assange, that video gets demonetized, that video gets removed, or it really hurts our channel. It could lead us to get another suspension. And that's why we have Rockfin, so that we can talk about him. But again, this isn't how it should be. And I don't like self-censoring myself. I don't like the fact that I have to do that. But I tell my audience, like, hey, look, we do talk about him, but it goes on Rockfin because of the YouTube algorithm. Because when you say his name, or you put his face in a title, or put his face in a thumbnail, or say his name, or put his name in the title, YouTube will go after you. And this is very frightening. And more channels need to speak out, especially those that have a larger platform. But I don't think we're going to be seeing that anytime soon.
No, and
No.
that's extremely disheartening, but also extremely unsurprising. I wouldn't expect anything more or less from said channels. So I wanted to ask you, you served as a Marine, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I served from 2004 to 2008.
Okay, and you did several tours, I'm assuming?
I did 2 tours in Iraq.
Okay. And I'd like to know, maybe this is too personal, but if you could answer it, I'd like to know, what was the impetus for you to serve in the military and in Iraq? And then back then, did you ever think anything like this would be happening to not just Americans, but users of these platforms all over the world? Because ostensibly you were fighting Operation Iraqi Freedom, right?
Okay, well, so let me go ahead and answer this. So from 2004 2008, I served in the United States Marine Corps. I did 2 tours in Iraq. I'm proud to say that all my brothers in arms all came home alive and well and in one piece to their friends and family and loved ones. And that's a rare thing. And I'm glad that everyone came home. That's very important to me. And I wish them all the best, whatever they're doing. Number 2, my reason for joining, it's a two-pronged thing. Number 1, serve my country, and 2, go to college. And I have to say, looking back at it now, would I've ever imagined something like this, where the internet has as much power, or the fact that people are now being censored? I think a lot of us, we all know that technology progresses as time goes on. I mean, like, pretty soon, who knows, 10 years from now, this stuff that we're using is going to be antiquated. But I don't think any of us were really prepared about the power of the internet and what it can do, the good that it can do, and the bad. I don't think anyone really understood. There were maybe a handful of people who kind of maybe saw the bigger picture. I don't think even I would have ever imagined how fast information would be available to us in 2004, 2008. Because when I got out, it's when I started really getting involved in computers, technology, the internet, all that kind of stuff, applying to college. And, I think we really saw the power of the internet during the Obama campaign for his presidency. And that was the sign of how powerful this tool can be. But now we're seeing just how deadly it can be too, because then it's also censoring journalists, content creators. And if we continue down this path, well, then I can predict, and yeah, it's 1984. You got to be careful what you say. If people don't step up, and that's the thing. If people don't step up right now, if people don't start doing a general strike, if people don't start demanding the right of freedom of speech and holding these tech corporations accountable, well, then nothing will fundamentally change. and all your favorite content creators, not just independent media, might be on different platforms or might be silenced and might not ever be able to get back on the internet.
Yeah.
So,
And I only ask about your service in the Marines because I think the claims to the war, both the wars on Iraq and Afghanistan, they really now they already gave the lie to themselves a long time ago. But I think with what we're seeing with these tech companies and their censorship, that at home, that repression at home really gives the lie to this so-called mission for democracy abroad, really exposes it for the imperialism that it is. And maybe that's a tenuous connection, but I see one there. So
well,
that's
here's the situation we have to look at with corporate media. They sold a lie of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There were none. There were none. Now, if they're somewhere buried out there, then I think we're all going to be surprised. But I think it's fair. I think it's safe to say now that there were none.
Mhm.
None. I think we can. I think there's maybe only a small group of people say, well, they're still out there, but whatever. I don't want to engage in that. But the point is, no weapons of mass destruction. But this
buried
is
in the desert somewhere.
this isn't the first time corporate media lied. Let's look at something recent. And of course, there's plenty of other examples, but let's look at the most prolific one, Russiagate. Russia. Turns out Russiagate wasn't a thing at all. And at the same time, too, how corporate media kept on promoting not one, but both of the impeachments.
Mm-hmm.
And then also let's look at the smear job that corporate media did towards not only Bernie Sanders and progressives in 2016, but the ridiculous hit job they did to Representative Tulsi Gabbard, calling her a Russian spy, an Assad apologist, a Syrian apologist. They called her a Republican spy. They said that she's going to run third party and that she's doing it for the Republicans to destroy the progressives and everything.
She wants a
else.
job on Fox News.
Yeah,
she's a Modi agent. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's a Modi agent.
Yeah.
She's gonna be. She wants to be part of this Trump's second term or something like that. And the thing is, hold on, let's take a step back. Did that happen? Because I don't think Tulsi Gabbard did any of those things.
Yeah.
She's not a Russian spy, a Modi agent, an Assad apologist, none of those. She's not running. She did not run as a Republican. She did not run as a third party candidate, but yet corporate media kept on doing articles about her. And so corporate media as a whole, especially with its connections now with big tech, they can continue to get away with this, and no one's really going to call them out because people do trust corporate media because it's names and things that we're familiar with. But there's a cost to it, and that is they can continue to lie and no one wises up until much, much later. But I think maybe things have changed thanks to the incompetency of the Democrats. And we could talk about a little bit more about that later.
No, well, okay. So I'm really glad that we're talking about all this because I think it's a really important point to drive home that this isn't just about censorship. This is, kind of what we've been talking about. It is about the propaganda. It is about legitimately it's narrative control. They want to control whatever you can read, see, hear, listen to, talk about. It is making sure that they just have the ability to manage basically your thoughts. I know that sounds very conspiratorial, but it really is how this works.
It's not though. If you look at Israel's PR machine, it's exactly what they do.
Yes. And I don't think that you can't deny it any longer. I mean, how many times does your government get to lie to you before your sense of skepticism kicks in? I mean, how many times do you have to be confronted with this reality before you realize that you are being manipulated? People are being manipulated on a daily basis. Our mainstream media is essentially just state-run propaganda. Because it's owned by corporations and corporations own our government. And so it is state-run propaganda. So it really isn't just about censoring dissenting voices. This is a multi-sided attack on not just free speech, but our right to know, our right to hold powerful people accountable, our right to talk about controversial issues, our right to challenge authority. We really are being boxed into a place where you cannot step outside the approved narrative, or you will be discredited or demonetized or suspended or whatever. There's like all manner of approach that they're taking to this. So it really is like this much broader issue. It's really, I wish I could find the words to make people understand how dire this is. Really. I mean, I know that sounds like super dramatic, but to me, I really do feel like this is like kind of the front lines of everything else. You know, you cannot fight for any other issue that you care about if you don't have the ability to, you know, talk about things, disseminate information, have conversations that are controversial in a public way, in like a fair way, where it's not one like the mainstream narrative is being you know, literally forced upon us. You know, it comes up on our autoplay on YouTube. It's what's playing in every airport, every doctor's office, when you go to get your oil changed, CNN or Fox News is on the TV in the little waiting room or whatever.
Like what? Like when Israel's bombing Gaza and they have CNN coverage and they have a panel and it's two Israeli representatives or two ADL representatives, never a Palestinian voice. And that's been going on for a long time. But now we're seeing, a Palestinian voice isn't necessarily a dissenting voice, but there are a lot of dissenting Palestinian voices, and we're seeing them get censored. There are a bunch I follow on Twitter, and they follow me back, and I don't see their tweets anymore come across in my notifications. And it's obvious from what happened to Hard Lens Media that we're on a very slippery downward slope, and I don't know that there's any recovery from it besides these alternative platforms we've been talking about. But
yeah, well, we see, the thing is we don't have much of a choice but to fight back. And you know, again, we're asking people to politely tweet at YouTube, hey, you made a mistake, remove the suspension. Now, I hope somebody from Team YouTube sees this and sees the videos that we've done with that I've been on with other content creators. But you know, I hope they also notice that they're damaging a lot of people's livelihoods. And you know, to case in point about, you know, what's happening with corporate media, you know, I think people will wise up to the fact that we are being misled, that we are being censored. Because let's just rewind back the clocks. Corporate media was saying that Biden can get things done. Biden is the person that is most qualified, and that things will be better under Biden. You know, corporate media was running that.
Build Back Better.
Now, of course, maybe I'm being maybe too open with the fact that I'm saying corporate media was the main cheerleader, but there was a lot of glowing articles about him. And then the primary happens. Bernie Sanders drops out, of course. Then we go into the general election, and Biden becomes president. What have we seen since then? Biden is, I don't know, is Joe Manchin president?
War crimes.
Woo. Okay, we need to start digging into that, because my friend, a lot is happening right now. Yeah. And so I am super interested in your take on the absolute, it is a circus. So we have, first of all, as we're talking about censorship, we have progressives in Congress leading the charge on that. You know, the most outspoken cheerleaders for more censorship and more. It's really it's depressing. But not only do you have that, you have Joe Biden, who, you know, ran on $15 an hour minimum wage. And they're using this Senate parliamentarian bullshit to pretend that they can't do anything about it. Oh, we're just so powerless. And then you have, you know, dude, there's so much that we need to talk about. I don't even know where to start. I honestly don't even know where to start.
Well, we could talk about how, hey, we get that $1,400. So, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. We're out of poverty now. You know what? We're
We
out of
did it.
poverty. We did it.
Kit, dude, we defeated fascism and poverty within like 3 months.
There we go. Hey,
Wow.
I guess we don't have to do this anymore. We're over. It's all done. It's all done.
We are like literally Joe Biden is a miracle worker.
The
Everybody
most
was right.
important the most important thing is that AOC is safe. And
Yeah. Let's when we talk about politicians, that when she kind of made it, and a lot of these politicians kind of made what January 6th about themselves, there's a growing anger and resentment that's happening in this country. I mean, Congress has a 13% job approval rating. But of course, depending on which poll you're using, apparently, because we covered this on the show, they now got a 36% approval rating. So I don't know how that number jumped up so fast. I mean, maybe there was something I missed, but nothing is being done. And when we see Senator Sinema, a Democrat who was originally in the Green Party, who did tweet out in March of 2014 that we need a livable wages, raise the wages, and then do a happy thumbs down, and then also
with a little curtsy.
Yeah, with a little curtsy,
What
and then
the
also
F?
bring in cake for her colleagues in the Senate. It's quite clear that corporate media can spin their narrative as much as they want, but actions speak louder than words, deeds, not statements. And our politicians and our progressive allies in Congress can make a good tweet. They can make a very powerful video. But what are you doing?
That's not their job, though.
If you're not going to fight for us, well, then corporate media can't really go to bat for you, and people are going to wise up to the fact, like, okay, well, you Democrats can't get anything done.
Okay, so yeah, okay, this is, people get mad at me because I focus so much on progressives. There's a reason for that. They are supposed to be on our team. Like, they're supposed to be our allies. And here's the issue that I have. First of all, I mean, this really goes back. Like, they ran on challenging the Democratic establishment, challenging Nancy Pelosi, really trying to, flip things up and make what did AOC said? We're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party. We have to hold them accountable. That was her whole thing. That was the whole purpose of getting them elected, was that we were going to have progressives.
Appeal to the Wu-Tang crowd there.
Well, I mean, progressives who just got openly cheated in a primary. That was their answer. The squad was supposed to be the progressive answer to the obvious corruption in the Democratic Party. And the squad was going to get elected and go in there and challenge them and, try to make a difference in some way of I don't believe in that being a viable option.
Did you actually believe that was going to happen?
No, that's what I was just about to say. I don't actually believe in that, but this is what they ran on, but people are still excusing it. So yeah, it's like they run on challenging the Democratic establishment. They run on Medicare for all. They couldn't, they won't even almost fight for that. They won't even pretend to fight for it. Force the vote was like a no-brainer. This is why I focus on progressives. I don't understand why people don't get that they are the ones who are the gatekeepers to progress for us. I know who Republicans are. I don't there's no mystery there. There's no question. And I know who progressives are too. But my point is that if you are somebody who believes in the electoral system and holding politicians accountable, the people you want to be holding accountable should be the ones who are claiming to be fighting for you. That's, if you're just focusing on Republicans, which the squad often does, always does, you're missing the bigger picture 100%.
Well, the issue with the Democrats, and especially progressives, because we get some pushback too from a lot of people saying, well, how come you always dunk on Democrats and the progressives in Congress? They're doing the best they can. So the thing is, here's the thing. I'd rather you directly tell me what your actions are than put a neoliberal mask on and say, oh, we kind of care about you, but there's nothing we can do. See, at least with the Republican establishment, not Republican voters, Republican establishment, elected officials, and Trump himself, when they give me the middle finger and say no to Medicare for all or a stimulus check or whatever, well, hold on, let me backpedal on that stimulus check, because Trump wanted to do a continuous stimulus check, but Nancy, Mama Bear, said no to that. Let's look at other progressive policies.
So is Joe a quick interjection? Is Joe Manchin Papa Bear now?
I don't want to. Let's not go down that road.
That's gross a little bit. That just actually, yeah, it seems weird.
That's kind of gross.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But
I hope AOC does not use that. But you know, when Trump and the Republican leaders say no to progressive policies, at least they're upfront with it, and they're, you know, they don't want it, and that's okay. I can kind of understand that. But with Democratic lawmakers, your whole idea of a party is you're supposed to be challenging and outmaneuvering your political rivals. But yet we see the Democrats bow down, kowtow to Republican demands or blue dog Democrat demands, and our progressive allies do nothing. Like Senator Bernie Sanders can speak a good game, but you know, at the end of the day, he said Joe Biden is his good friend. Well, that's something he has to freaking own.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
you
and he
own it,
voted
or-
for the CARES Act, and he
Yeah.
voted like he's voting to approve all of these horrific cabinet appointments. And he's, you know, refusing to really stand up to Neera Tanden, and he's, I mean, it's painful. It is painful how awful and just obviously awful he is and has become. But it really is, to me, it's offensive. Like do you really think that people are that fucking stupid that they don't, and obviously there are people who are, that sounds really harsh, but these people they're not fighting for you. That there is no fight in Bernie Sanders. There is zero fight in Bernie Sanders. And I don't care like what your excuse is for him. Like, oh, well, he was threatened, or they threatened his family, or he's just playing the long game, or he's doing the best he can, or whatever your excuse for him is. I don't care, because we need somebody to actually fight.
And what's grotesque about the $15 an hour minimum wage is that it wasn't even part of the original bill. Bernie lobbied for it as an amendment, and that's when we saw Cinema do her curtsy thumbs down, which is not to get, I'm not excuse me, I'm not trying to give Bernie any credit, but just point out the fact that we hear about this $1.9 trillion COVID bill that, you know, Biden has put forth that's gonna go across the board and
shower people with money,
get everything fixed. And the original version doesn't even have $15 an hour minimum wage, which is not a livable wage, by the way.
No, $15 an hour today is offensive. Like if they did that right now today, that's offensive. And the fact that they're talking about $15 an hour phased in over several years, this is what it depresses me.
2025 is when we're
Yeah. Yes. And here's what depresses me. And people always say like, this is very idealist of me, but the American people deserve fucking better. We have been convinced and propagandized and manipulated to accept that a tepid fight over $15 an hour in the year 2021 is like just the normal political discourse, and that's where we should be at, and that's just the way things are. And are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This country is run by the people. You deserve better. Like we all deserve better. I don't care what you do, or I really don't care. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care. I don't care. Everybody in this country deserves better than they're getting. $15 an hour? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Well,
sorry.
let's look at a private corporation like Costco, for example. They have raised their wage up now to $16 an hour for their workers. In 2019, they raised it up to $15. Now in 2021, they raised it up to $16. And you know, the thing is, it's a private entity that's doing it, because I guess they see the bigger picture that, hey, look, we treat our workers well, people will come to our store and do that. But the United States government, you know, we're gonna have to raise the wages up much higher than $15. It should be $25, maybe $30 an hour, maybe $40 an hour at this point, because again, you got Americans out there working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. But on top of that, add the pandemic on here. And again, there's a lot of people who are still unemployed, who don't have work, and are relying on that $2,000 stimulus check. And at the same time, too, we don't have a robust healthcare system. We have a privatized system that is basically leading people to bankruptcy and homelessness. And when push came to shove, when the first forced the vote, the real one that was led by, Jimmy Dore, Brianna Joy Gray, Justin Jackson, Cornel West, and so many others. Again, there's a whole list of so many people who did. I apologize if I'm skipping people, but forced the vote was given a pushback, and it wasn't even acknowledged by the 15 congressmen and women that were on the forced the vote petition. But also there were progressive allies, coveted blue checkmark people who have larger platforms who were originally for it, like Cenk and Sam Cedar, but then flip-flopped on it. And because they didn't like Breonna Joy Gray or Jimmy or Cornel West or anybody else that was there. But what happened then is a few months later, Cenk was trying to do his own force to vote for 15, and it didn't happen. And then he did that 18-minute video trying to say he's burning bridges. How can you burn bridges if you never had access to them in the first place? And by doing this, you're kind of showing that, all right, well, welcome to the club. Is this your first time realizing that the Democrats and the progressive allies in Congress won't do what they're doing, won't do what they ran for unless you really hold their feet to the fire? Yeah, you could do some cover for them, and that's fine if maybe they're being attacked by conservatives. But when it comes down to criticism by liberals or Democrats or progressives, they deserve to have their feet held to the fire and to be challenged. And, but here's the thing, you have conservative voters and libertarian voters who say, yeah, we should do something about our healthcare system. No one acknowledges the fact that Medicare for all is popular, but our progressive allies, what did they do? They put in Nancy Pelosi. Now, the difference between how that force of vote ended in this one or I guess it can be argued that this was another force of vote for 15. We did manage to shine a light on not one, but 8 Democrats that said no to a living wage. They should be primaried and they should be kicked out. With the force to vote for Medicare for all, let's say in a hypothetical scenario that those 15 congressmen and women managed to get Nancy to put Medicare for all for a vote on the House floor. It would have shined a light on those House Democrats and House Republicans that would say no to their people getting health care at the height of a pandemic. So we're going to have to see what a real pushback coalition will look like. But as it stands right now, the left needs to realize that our politicians are not our heroes, they're our public servants, and we must continuously hold them accountable. Because if you don't, you're going to get stuff like this, where you have Sinema doing a curtsy, you have Bernie talking a good game, and you have the 15 congressmen and women who are progressives still being silent but tweeting nice tweets. That's not going to put food in our bellies. That's not going to get rid of our medical or student debt. And the left is going to have to really come to terms with the fact that if we can't get our act together, then there will not be a left movement. Maybe all those that have been critical of the left are truly correct. Like there isn't one at all because of the amount of people, especially those with larger platforms, that will do cover for progressive Democrats. And we can't do that. The whole idea of journalism, the whole idea of media is to hold those in power accountable, even those that you like.
Especially those that you like, especially those who are purporting to be somebody who's going to fight for you in Congress or whatever. Because I can guarantee you, and again, I don't even believe in electoral politics, but I understand people that do, but I can guarantee you, those people are facing enormous pressure from corporations, the establishment Democrats, if you can't counteract that by being extremely vigilant about their actions and extremely fairly critical. I mean, nothing that we're saying here is unfair. This is a reality. This is the way that they are conducting themselves in Congress. People who are claiming to fight for us. They're not. It's obvious. Like they could not be more obvious about it. I think the trouble is, like we've been kind of talking about, people are very impressed by tweets and dramatic speeches and strongly worded letters or petitions or whatever. And that's fine. Like that kind of stuff is fine for activists and kind of like loudmouth chicks from Ohio who run talk shit on Twitter. But you actually have power. You are a member of Congress. Tweeting isn't fighting. There are things you can be doing there, and there have been things this whole time that they could have been doing to put some pressure on Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic establishment, the system in general. And they haven't done anything. They've capitulated at every turn. they're not fighting for any of us in any way. They're just tweeting a good game. And it's really sad that people fall for that over and over and over and over again. It really is. It depresses me.
And
What
I think there's also a structural assumption to the argument you're making, as in the structure of government that exists now, that has existed for, if you want to be generous, since the founding of the US. There's this assumption that the system must remain in place. We just need to get the right players in there. And I think that's something that we need to question as well. What would we replace our current system with? I don't have the answer to that. I think that's a collective decision and conversation. But I think that's a big problem, is that there's this assumption that, well, we have to work within the structure we already have, and
This is the way it is.
right.
I would like to offer an alternative. And the thing is, though, what I would suggest is, and it's something maybe difficult, because it's one thing to say, well, you're asking people to make a big risk, and that is, there must be a general strike. There has to be a general strike. At this point, we're not getting anything from Congress. No Medicare for all, no student debt forgiveness, no continuous stimulus checks, no kind of improvements to unemployment. There's a lack of jobs, lack of opportunities. The wages are not going to be increased, so we have to do a general strike. And the other thing too, and this one will be twice as hard, we have to look at alternative political parties, third parties. I know the Greens and Libertarians have their fair share of problems, but I think now more than ever, if they want to get their act together, this is the time to do it. Moving for People's Party, maybe PSL, maybe something else has to rise up. Something has to rise up to help out the people, working class citizens, because we're not being represented by the Republican or Democratic Party. And I know that there are people saying, well, let's reform the Democratic Party from the inside. Well, in theory, that sounds good. And look, maybe that's another alternative, okay? But I saw Justice Democrats try it. Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, and DSA. And all those people have now been either silenced or have just gone along with the Democratic narrative.
Y'all,
So
Bernie Sanders has been reforming the party for 5 years, and they are worse. They just elected Joe Biden to president, the Democratic Party. Joe Biden. Do you guys understand what that, like, this is Captain Crime Bill. This is the Iraq guy. He is a known racist. He has a nearly 50-year career of being just a massive shit stain. And he's corporate owned. And that's who the Democratic Party, after rigging 2 primaries against progressives, that's not reforming the party, fam. It's not working out. It's not working out.
I put out a little thread, like a 5-tweet thread last night, that breaks down sort of chronologically Biden's statements leading up to the war on Iraq and his unequivocal support for the war. And it's just mind-boggling how apologetic, how supportive of the war he was, and then tried to issue some kind of milquetoast apology afterward. And now people see him as this, or a lot of people see him as this sort of dove, in a sense, while he's going on to recently commit war crimes in Syria. So
now, here's the thing, and that's the problem. Never hero worship these politicians. Now, look, I respect Bernie Sanders for what he did in 2016 by inspiring people that, hey, look, we have a screwed up system. Now, obviously, he's too old to fight anymore at this point in time. I mean, if someone's going to not once but twice let the DNC screw him over, I mean, if he's going to run in 2024, I'm like, buddy, you're too old. And I've seen the show twice.
That would be a really bad idea.
And it's just something that we have to acknowledge. And now with Biden, yeah, the orange boogeyman is gone. Trump is gone. But did anyone not pay attention to what happened at CPAC? Trump is indicating he might run again in 2024. Now, he might not. But if the Republican establishment, if they're smart, they have a lot of political ammunition to use against the Democrats in 2022 and in 2024. And I don't know
yes.
how the midterms will play out, or how 2024 will play out, or who's going to be running in the Republican Party. Because if Trump runs again, he's got a lot of ammunition. He just needs to surround himself with people that will actually have him hit the Democrats. I mean, there's a lot that he can do, but this is Trump we're talking about. So, but this is the scenario that we got to remember. And also, the Democrats, during their second impeachment, the whole reason for them doing this was so that Trump wouldn't run again. How weak is that? You can't defeat him during a debate or on policy, or have newer policies put in. But instead you're afraid that he's going to run again, so you want to stop him from running. So that already signals that the Democrats are afraid of Trump.
I don't even know if they're afraid that he's going to run again. Actually, I think that they, either way, they're going to use him as fear to get people to vote blue no matter who in 2022. Oh, but Trump may run again in 2024. We need to really make it like we got to take more seats, and they're going to use it in 2022. It'll fail because I think that they're going to get slaughtered in the midterms. That's just my prediction. I think Democrats are going to get slaughtered in the midterms.
It very well can happen, but with this pathway that we're seeing, to a lot of the progressives that were browbeaten into voting blue no matter who, or to those other larger platforms that were telling everyone, hold your nose and vote for Biden. Like now it's like, okay, well, nothing's happening. We held our nose. Nothing's happening. The kids are still in cages. People are still being evicted from their homes.
This was all predictable.
Yeah,
this is why I don't believe in electoral politics. This is why when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, but Nina Turner," no, she's not going to do anything. She's already straight up told you she will disappoint you at some point. Come on, guys. The problem is not getting like Steve Poikonen always says, it's like a shiny new part on a machine that is just like designed to constantly break down and murder you. And you just keep slapping new parts on it every couple of years. And that's all that is. And,
can you say that in Steve's voice?
No, because I can't do Steve's voice. And he will get so mad at me because Pasta tries to do.
Steve does a fantastic job. And not to mention, shout out to Steve Poikman, who had me on the show.
I love Steve is I love Steve. Yes, he's
guy.
My dude. So yeah, but that's kind of like where we find ourselves. I don't know. It's I really just don't know. I don't know.
I think here's the thing. It's going to be up to the people. It's really up to the people, but there has to be a general strike. That's just my opinion. And it's going to have to be people, workers, no matter what their political beliefs are, they're going to have to step up. We're going to have to step up against censorship. We're going to have to start demanding more as citizens. But as soon as the people start stepping up, that's when leaders follow. Because if the people are just going to keep on taking this, then nothing will fundamentally change. And that's a roadway to disaster, and I don't want to go down that road.
I don't know. Like, I'm a pessimist, and it's
do that. And as soon as people start doing this and realizing that we have more power over these politicians, things can change. But it's up to the people. How much more can we take? Because soon, I believe that the moratorium on evictions is going to be expiring pretty soon. And what's the number of people being at risk of being evicted? 30 to 40 million. That's a high number. And 30 to 40 million Americans, I don't know what their political beliefs are. I don't know who they worship. I don't know, who they are as one single person. But those people have friends and families. Those friends and families are voters. And people are going to see what the Democrats are doing. And we cannot just rely on Team Red and Team Blue, because their number one constituents are hedge fund managers, big banks, major corporations, Wall Street executives, the top 1%. Now, I'm being calm about this. I could be screaming.
Military industrial complex.
yeah.
And the thing is,
prison industrial complex as well.
Exactly. And we could be screaming and yelling about this and ranting. And the thing is, I'm enraged. But there's only so many times I can yell, and to where I can just basically point my finger at the people and be like, how much longer can we take this? Because this is not right. Mm-hmm. Being at risk of being evicted, or at least was medical debt, for example. One bad day and you lose everything. You're at risk of being, I mean, one of the leading causes of homelessness in this country is medical bills, medical debt.
Right.
And then again, how many people are talking about it? Just getting back to the point of us talking about censorship. How many people are really talking about this? Not corporate media,
No.
Yeah.
independent media that's doing the job.
What we've heard recently is somewhat optimistic report on unemployment, and it totally does not match the material reality that we see and hear and read about every day. Like you were just saying, Kit, how many people are facing evictions? What's, and then how is the unemployment report even calculated? Who's being counted, who's being left out? And it's, I think, another example of how the politicians we've been talking about are just, people like cinema. They're just so out of touch with reality, with what's actually happening to people like you.
Or they're perfectly in touch and they're psychopaths.
Well, yeah, I mean that as well. So it's
and here's the thing, this is why this is so important to, like, I realize this makes me sound like really idealistic, but it really does make me sad that the American people have allowed themselves to be led to a place where this is what they think they deserve. Like, this is acceptable. This is just, oh, this is the best we can do. This is the way it's always been. This is, we just got to kind of go with it. And, I'll just continue hating that person over there for this reason. And you know what I mean? Like, they're very good at keeping us fighting amongst ourselves and not paying attention to the man behind the curtain. And it really is just depressing that, because I just, like, as somebody who, it's kind of hard to explain because I'm kind of antisocial, but I also love humans. And like, I want humans to be okay and taken care of. I don't want to see anybody suffer or die needlessly or starve, or nobody ever. And so it's just really weird to me that this is something that has become acceptable, and that Americans just seem to think that this is the best that it gets for them, and they should just be thankful for it. It's really sad because you really, like, y'all, you deserve better. You run this country. You are, look at this essential workers nonsense. Like, we really do have more power and more influence than we give ourselves credit for, but we're like giving it away. We're being like zombie walked into our own demise. And it's just sad. And I can't figure out the words to get people to recognize that we really do have the ability to fight back against this.
Time. I think, and here's the thing, I think it's going to take some time, but I think people are wising up to the fact, they're seeing it firsthand. And I don't want to be all gloom and doom, because I want to have hope. I do believe that as soon as people realize that they're being screwed over, and that all their attempts to reform the Democratic Party, or even that those who want to reform the Republican Party, it's not going to work unless you are a multi-millionaire or multi-billionaire. It's going to be up to the people to get in the streets, call for a general strike, call for higher wages, higher than $15, get Medicare for all, actually make it happen. And the thing is, all the great things that did happen in this country, was it done by politicians or was it done by the people? It was done by the people, not the politicians. Now, theoretically, it should be the other way around, where our leaders actually get into office and actually do their jobs. But so long as they're given a six-figure salary with medical benefits and speaking privilege,
retirement,
and so many other retirement packages, well, then I have to say, we got to make that job undesirable for anyone with an ego. And Chris had just said it best. Like, all these when you see a politician, a lot of them are narcissists, they're egomaniacs, and that even goes for someone like Bernie too. Like, I guess maybe he's stuck on his own ego, and maybe he's trying to say he's reforming the Democratic Party. Maybe he was surprised how many people heard his message and actually went along with it. Maybe he's the guy that maybe he's the dog that caught the car and finally didn't know what to do with it after he caught it. But again, it's the people. It always comes down to the people to step up. It comes down to people calling for ending of censorship. It's up to the people to calling for the protection of their favorite content creators. It's up to the people to get out in the streets. And I think we're going to see this happen. But we can't let negative, negative thoughts or be disillusioned. So long as if we surrender, if people give up, if people stop, well, then you're giving those politicians and those in power the satisfaction in knowing that they beat you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're fighting hard to keep Heartland's Media around so we get our suspension. Because I'm not going to give YouTube the satisfaction and say, oh, yeah, I accept my suspension, even though I never said anything negative in a video about Biden not being president. I never said that at all.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
That's exactly what they want us to do too. And that is why this is such an important conversation, because people really do need to try to support independent media however you can. It is more important now than ever. It is legitimately under attack. There's a crap ton of censorship. The propaganda is, out of control. It's y'all, they just, Washington Post put out a article that the headline was that Joe Biden was showering you with money. I mean, come on.
That's journalism right there.
Right? I mean,
journalists.
You guys, it's bad. We're in a very bad spot right now.
He's
really
golden
are.
Showering us with money.
This is trickle down, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also believe that it's going to be in 2 weeks when the people get their next stimulus check. So
I still haven't gotten my first one.
I haven't gotten anything either. And they means tested it too, so that's fun. That's fun. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks. So that's maybe, I could be wrong about this. So in 2 weeks, let's say, including today, maybe March 19th, maybe March 22nd. I don't know. I'm probably wrong in the math. Anyone who's watching, type in the comment section below when the 2 weeks when we should probably get our stimulus check, because wow. I mean, again, but how long can we wait? How long have we been waiting for our
Well,
stimulus?
that's the thing too. And it was 2000 and now it's 1400 and now it's like, well, maybe in March sometime. And people are just like, okay. I mean, hopefully we'll get it then. And they're making excuses.
But overnight, Congress can approve the NDAA and
defense spending and
throw the military $1 trillion a year.
And Iran.
Sorry?
Yeah.
And don't forget, our president and Senate and Congress have time to bomb Syria and Iran too.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
without any conversation, no debate, no
Right.
questioning about how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for those bombs?
Right.
There's nothing. And that is insane. That's another thing. I just can't believe that's something that we accept, that, we just drop bombs. Nobody talks about it or questions it, or there's no debate. There's no conversation. There's no wringing of hands about, oh, is this the right? We're blowing people up like just willy nilly. You know what I mean? Like and that's just like, it's been normalized. It's normalized. Like, that's just the way things are. And that's our foreign policy. And that's just the way, I mean, we can't do any better. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Blowing people up, like grown ass adults are just blowing people up. I don't know why that.
And what's insane is that there's no possible way to make a legal justification for it. We talked about this with Danny Sherzin on our last episode, and the U.S. strikes came from within Iraq, which is illegally occupied, they went into Syria near the border and supposedly hit nefarious Iranian-backed militias. But the U.S. is also illegally in Syria. So it's just this cavalcade of
so ridiculous
war crimes that you can't justify in any way. And the fact that nobody in the mainstream blinks an eye at it, and a lot of people in independent media don't bat an eye either. It's
well, and just to speak on the propaganda, what was the Politico article? The headline was something like something Iranian backed militia, like we had to attack this. And then in the article, like buried 5 paragraphs deep, it's like, well, we don't actually know where the attacks.
But then again, too, let's also look at that village in Syria where like 22 people or insurgents were killed. Do we know that they were insurgents? Are we positive?
Exactly.
Was that a village that was harboring terrorists? Was that an abandoned village, or was that an innocent village where 22 innocent people got bombed? We may not know. We may never know.
Right.
And that's a sad fact, especially now as the Biden administration, because now you have people who tweet out saying, "Oh, it's so good to see presidential actions happen and nobody tweeting negatives." Like I guess doing like negative tweets about it. So I guess the meme, the internet meme, came to life of the wonderful drone that has rainbow stickers on it and hearts, all while bombing people, poor people. It came to truth. So we live in a cartoon. So that meme came to life, and so many people went to brunch, and they're not fighting. They don't care about the fact that those kids are now in cages, or wait, better yet, they're what's the new name they gave them?
Overflow facilities.
Overflow facility.
I
Again,
think AOC called them something else too. I forget. Was it overflow facilities? I know that was like a Joe Biden thing, but I think AOC called them something else.
Aren't they cinder block penthouses?
I don't know. The point is that I'm waiting for the day for AOC to do a protest in front of those facilities with the Biden administration, but
She never will. She never will.
No,
yeah, she won't.
she won't even talk about it. She's not even talking about it. I mean,
She
other
hasn't
than
talked
making
about
like
security.
vague statements about overflow facilities, and she's not. There's like what before it was concentration camps. Like she literally called it concentration camps when it was Trump, and now it's overflow facilities, and it's fine, and it's like it's basically like day camp. Like it's cool. Like there's arts and crafts.
I think that's all those kids are separated from their parents who
Right.
came to this country, trying to
Arts
get a
and
better
crafts and abuse.
Yeah,
and, the thing-
widespread.
And the thing is, those kids, I don't know what kind of journey they went on, the nightmarish journey they had to go through just to come to this country. I know for a fact I would not be able to make it, but why are they even leaving their countries in the first place? Is because
Exactly.
again, of a ridiculous war on drugs.
Mhm.
And who's consuming the drugs? Mr. and Mrs. America. That's who's consuming it. And again, we have the highest prison population. And the reason why most people are behind bars, men and women, is because of they're nonviolent drug offenders.
We also have to acknowledge the coups that the U.S. has essentially manufactured in Honduras, in Bolivia, in Ecuador.
So many places. We could be here for 15 minutes listing them all.
Venezuela.
Yep.
And yeah, these people, refugees don't want to, or migrants, or however you want to term them, or however they ought to be termed, they don't want to leave their homes
No.
and come here
It's
anywhere to take advantage. They're leaving their homes because they have to, and it's largely because of damage that and destruction and just ravaging that we are unleashing in their countries.
Well, and not only are they leaving their homes, the journey that they take is incredibly dangerous.
Right.
Why would you risk that for just like, oh yeah, we want to go steal their jobs? No, that's ridiculous. The reason that they have, when you're desperate and you're left with no other choice, and it's, I need to save my child, you will go to extreme measures, whatever it takes. And that's what we're seeing. And, people aren't making those connections. You have some people who just want to blame immigrants for everything, and and then you have other people who, want to accept immigrants, but they don't want to deal with the cause of what's happening and why there are refugees and migrants, and what is causing all of these people to flee their countries. And so it's like on the right you have people, and it's just this ridiculous notion that
we don't just do it to Latin and South America. We do it to North Africa and the Middle East too. And
Libya, for example, there's an open slave trade.
Exactly.
There. And but yet what did Hillary Rodham Clinton say? Oh, we came, we saw, and he died. And,
right.
Okay, great. Ha 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 ha. We destabilized the government.
Psychopath.
And now there is still slavery still happening there.
Right.
And you can have I forget which person tweeted out that how happy they were to see the people of Libya now free. But then again, how are they free if, again, men, women, and children are being auctioned in the slave market? How is that a thing? How's that a thing to be happy about? You can say whatever you want about dictators and tyrants and kings, or somebody like Gaddafi. You can say whatever you want about him, but there
Well,
was an open slave trade in this country.
Well,
There was-
that's like when we say we're spreading
right.
democracy.
And it wasn't overrun by Wahhabi Contras, using hunting knives to cut people's heads off.
Yeah.
Under Gaddafi. And little known fact, which I always like to bring up though, when Gaddafi comes up, is that he was the first leader in the so-called Arab world to report Osama bin Laden to Interpol in 1998, I believe it was.
Really
Yeah.
Interesting.
fascinating.
I learned that from
Yeah, I'm gonna
Max
look that up
Blumenthal's
later.
book.
I gotta look that up.
Max Blumenthal's newest book, The Management of Savagery. Max is also the reason why Misty and I are co-hosts. So shout out to Max.
Shout out to Max.
He's
Shout out to
watching
Max.
this. If he
Again, he's
watches
done
this.
fantastic work. But even then, somebody like Max Blumenthal, or whenever he posts any of his content onto social media, again, let's look what happens. They kind of get censored too.
Right.
Dude, he had like a SWAT team show up to his place.
Yeah,
He got
Max
arrested
And
and
the thing is-
jailed.
Yeah, the thing is, Max Blumenthal, he has every right to report. And again, we're kind of getting back to censorship, but getting back to the main point. He has every right to cover stories and report them. And it's not Twitter's job or Facebook's job to censor an article from the Gray Zone or wherever else. Even let's look, I noticed it's a different article altogether, and you could say whatever you want about the New York Post, but when the New York Post did that article about Hunter Biden, what did Facebook and Twitter do? If you're sharing this, you got to go down. And when Max Blumenthal and so many others pointed out, or them when they were retweeting it, their tweets were taken down. And I don't want to see that happen. So again, Max Blumenthal and everyone else, they're doing fantastic work. They need to keep on speaking truth to power and be unapologetic. That's all.
Yeah, well, this is what terrifies me so much about what's happening right now, is that it is really genuinely so widespread. It's happening to everybody. It's happening to Max Blumenthal. It's happening to, Convo Couch and Hardlands Media. And it really is only going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Joe Biden is no friend to press freedom or freedom of speech. He's really kind of made that clear.
He'd probably tell you that, hey, you should vote for Trump.
Right? Listen, fat, vote for Trump.
Come on, man.
You want to feel my leg hairs? Okay, I took it too far. Yeah, but
Yo,
I mean, he really.
Do you think he wears like the high socks with the fucking straps on them that like keep?
Oh, maybe. Oh, I don't need that visual, Jesse. That's really just enough.
Hey, you brought up his leg hair.
I know, you're right. That's fair.
Enough was his leg hair. That was gross enough to imagine. The fact that even somebody animated that and put that on YouTube. Coherent speech. No, they did. Somebody did that job of, Biden with a bloody eye, which he had during one of those primary town halls. So, someone put the work in for that. But again,
real talk.
It's a fun place, and let's make it a fun place, but also an informative place. If you start censoring people or start deplatforming people, you're gonna make it not fun. And this is a little bit unrelated and what happened to radio, but I remember a time when radio used to be fun, when there used to be the shock jocks and controversial, radio shows. And look, were they family friendly? No, but I think people need to pull their kids aside and be like, okay, here's what you hear here, and let's make sure you don't expose yourself to it. But what happened to radio, the FCC eventually got in, destroyed it, made it the lame stuff that it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not entertaining. I mean, you only turn it on when there's nothing else to do.
Lab experiment from hell.
Yeah. It's going to happen to YouTube. It's going to happen to the internet. And I don't think a lot of people remember just how radio was basically censored and made what it is. And
I used to love radio.
Yeah, I almost went
kid.
to broadcasting school so that I could go. I wanted to be on the radio. Like I was a guest DJ at CD 101 at one point, and I was really into it. It's almost a thing I did.
Yeah, I used to listen to I'm in New Jersey, so at the time it was 101.1, and it was the oldie station, and at the time they played almost exclusively doo-wop, and they've changed since then their definition of oldies. So it's a lot of garbage from the 70s and 80s now. But as a kid, I would listen to that every night in 7th grade, for example. And I'd have a cassette in this, like my parents' old stereo, which I had in my bedroom, and I'd record songs off the radio and just have like this mixtape of doo-wop songs. And
I did that too.
but it was like, there was no sense of like this huge eye like looking over you, and or this sense that what you were hearing was cultivated or censored in a certain way so as to not provoke whatever, or do something nefarious, right? And yeah, you listen to radio now, like Kit was saying, and it's garbage. Even NPR, it's
Yeah. Well, the thing is, radio used to be fun, and when the FCC got involved, it made it not fun. And we're seeing the censorship happen to YouTube and on the internet. And the thing is that if we let it happen, it's where else can people go to speak their minds? Yes, there's other alternative platforms, but how many people are going to know about it? Especially as net neutrality is still at risk. It still is, even though some people are saying, well, okay, Biden's reversing the decision on net neutrality. It's still not over. The threat is still there. It's always ongoing. And the fact that we see people being deplatformed or being suspended, be they on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, it shouldn't happen at all. And I don't like seeing that happen to content creators. Now, I can speak from firsthand experience because Heartlands Media's early days were on radio. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's fun being in a radio station. It's something that I always wanted to do myself as a kid, and I actually had a chance to do it during our early days of Heartlands Media. But then again, too, we had to be extremely careful what we could say on the radio and what stories we could cover. And also, again, no profanity. So it's like, it's tough.
Is there an FCC list or guide as to what you can and can't say on the radio? Do you know?
I do know you can't do any of the swear words or,
right.
talk about.
I'm for sure that there is.
And also you have to be very careful about what stories that are controversial, how you report them.
Right.
It's again that self-censorship. Like it's because and Noam Chomsky did a very good job of kind of explaining it to that guy. I don't know if you guys have seen, I'm sure you have, the interview with, I forget who it is, some reporter, and Noam Chomsky, he's like, what you think I'm like lying to people like as a journalist? And Noam Chomsky's like, no, I think that you believe what you're saying. I'm just saying that if you didn't believe it, you wouldn't have the job that you have. If you weren't willing to tell that narrative, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. And that's really what it has come down to. Our methods and mechanisms of information are very much controlled. And it is like, we really are kind of at a turning point. With the Julian Assange case, this is really going to set a very scary precedent. Just given the fact that this will be the first time that a journalist will be, charged under the Espionage Act. He faces 175 years in prison. And if anybody was following the court case, they have jack shit. It's a farce. There are a million things that have happened in this case that make it, he was spied on in the Ecuadorian embassy. The conversations he had with his lawyers were spied on. That alone should be enough to get that case tossed out the window and set on fire. But we live in a society where that is that's been normalized. The smear campaign on WikiLeaks and Julian Assange started over a decade ago, and they have got us to the point now where this is an acceptable thing that we're willing to accept. But it really is just terrifying, kind of where we are. I know that sounds super dramatic, and I hate being that way. But I really do feel like this is kind of a turning point. It's not the increase in censorship, the Assange thing. And again, it's not Julian Assange, way bigger than that. That's just the precedent that's being set. He is just kind of the vehicle for and the dynamics
fascism. the dynamics of what's happening to him and what has happened to him play perfectly into the hands of government and big tech, because there's really, and this is not to say that we're better than other people, but there's overall just a very small group of us who are talking about Assange and why he should be free, and
I think
the threat his extradition and conviction pose. And most people are just either unaware of who Assange is, or they still cling to that narrative that he's a sexual assailant, which has been disproven and
A
thrown
hacker.
out. A hacker.
It's
Yeah,
for
I know.
fun. Again, let's look at what Julian Assange did. He is a reporter, a journalist, and WikiLeaks published that information that basically got out, and then Julian Assange, you know, he's not the hacker. He's not the person who got the information. He didn't do it. He didn't do anything wrong. But let's look at the character of Julian Assange. This is somebody who's been tortured, abused, and he's remained silent and consistent on following journalistic practices. I know one thing: I could not go through his amount of torture. I could not go through that amount of isolation. He has set a standard that a lot of us will need to follow in years to come. But he shouldn't be going through this at all. He didn't do anything wrong. He hasn't seen his children. He hasn't seen his partner. He can't properly, get counseled by his lawyers.
He can't meet with his lawyers. He can't.
I mean, for fuck's sake, he's in a glass box in the back of the courtroom during
that
his
they built
proceedings.
specifically for him to like create a sort of narrative.
There's a little bit more to this too. I think we all remember the story about how there were prisoners in Belmarsh prison before the COVID-19 crisis happened, who went on a hunger strike
Because
just
of his
so that
treatment.
he can get out of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, you can say whatever you want about prisoners. They are human beings, and yes, there are bad people. But when you have prisoners, aka society's bad guys,
And this is Belmarsh too. Like these are some high level.
It's a maximum security prison.
It's like Gitmo.
okay,
Like
those
it's the
people
UK Gitmo.
do that for him. It really should shine a light on just how much of this is a kangaroo court. Again, it's you have an Australian citizen who is seeking asylum in an Ecuadorian embassy, was dragged out and is imprisoned by
Who also had Ecuadorian citizenship before it was revoked, by the way. That was part of the shenanigans.
and then also again, he's in a British prison now and still remains behind bars at behest of the United States government. So this is I don't know if this is a proper definition of kangaroo court. Maybe this is an upside down crazy kangaroo court. I mean, but he should not be there. And then you also have political commentators on the left and right. Let's take, for example, when you have Sarah Palin, and as a former politician, say, hey, I made a mistake. A Republican conservative politician on top of it say, hey, I made a mistake about Julian Assange. He
released her emails, by the way.
Yeah.
WikiLeaks
and
released
she
her
said, hey, I
emails
made a
too.
mistake. He shouldn't be tortured. That takes a lot of courage. Now, I hope she truly didn't mean those words. I really do, because for me, that gives me hope that, okay, there's conservatives, libertarians who agree with us progressives and independents that Julian Assange should not be tortured. And not to mention, not one Democratic lawmaker in our current Congress has called for Julian Assange to be pardoned or released, except for one former one in the previous.
Tulsi Gabbard. Didn't Tulsi Gabbard? Yeah.
Who said his name, said he should be pardoned. Same thing with Edward Snowden.
Lots of times.
And a lot of times. And again, silence from Bernie Sanders, silence from the 15 congressmen and women in the House who were on the force of vote petition, nothing from them. Julian Assange should be pardoned. And
also
again,
put forth the Stop Arming Terrorists Act, which is like one of the most necessary.
And the paper ballots bill.
Right.
And the Off Fossil Fuels Act for Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
That too. But the thing is, and again, kind of bring it right back to how we even started this episode in the first place. Julian Assange being behind bars, if he is extradited here in the States in some sort of hypothetical scenario, which I hope the British courts don't allow to happen, but Biden administration wants to see happen. If he does get extradited, well then, then freedom of speech is really at risk. And then your concerns about how things might be gloom and doom might truly come to fruition because he can't come here. But the very fact that you have a British judge saying, well, I'm worried about how his mental condition will be because US prisons aren't safe. Yeah, then he shouldn't be in jail, period. He should be out. He should be with his loved ones. He should get immediate mental health treatment or whatever, because he's going to be on a long road to recovery. And I wish him all the best. And his family and friends should not be tortured like this any further. He should not be tortured like this. He needs to come home. It's just a simple fact. There's no need to debate about it. He didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't a hacker. He didn't do a spy job. He's a publisher, a reporter, a journalist. And he is someone who he needs to come out. He's not some secret spy. There's no need to have a debate about this. He needs to come home.
Right.
He's and I think it's because the United States government is saying, or the Biden administration is saying, he should still stay behind bars. And the biggest, and here's the thing, the Trump administration, I know a lot of people, like there's some Trump supporters who say like, oh yeah, Trump's for free speech. He could have been a hero. Trump could have done the right thing. Mm-hmm. Trump could have been a hero and really stuck it to the Democrats by pardoning Julian Assange, but he didn't. He didn't do it.
I had a strong feeling he was going to, kind of as, even if it was just a parting you, but.
No, it depends. Okay, so we have on pretty, well, I mean, I don't know. There, like a lot of people say that he was, they said that they were going to convict him on impeachment if he didn't, drop it and not go with a pardon. It's pretty reliable sources, but you have to be very, take everything with a grain of salt kind of.
Okay.
But yeah,
I haven't heard that until now. So
yeah. So, okay, we can talk about it later because I've kind of actually wanted to do a video on it at some point, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, I seriously just want to touch on one quick point that Kit made. I know you've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much. But the fact, okay. Like I always feel bad because we Justin and I tend to talk a lot and we like to talk to people for a long time. And sometimes people get
no argument here. I'm glad to be on the show to talk about our Lens Media, getting rid of our suspension, freeing Julian Assange, and so many other issues that need to be addressed. But sorry, I don't want to interrupt. So continue. Please.
No, it's fine. But I did just want to touch on the point that you made about the fact that they didn't want to extradite him because American prisons are so oppressive or whatever, and he's in poor mental state and he's a suicide risk. And it's mind-boggling to me how ridiculous that is, because how do you think he got in such a precarious mental condition? Because of the treatment that you have been subjecting him to, the 10 years of isolation and illegal and arbitrary detention, the psychological torture, the past almost 2 years now in Belmarsh. There's no heat in his wing. They've surrounded him with COVID patients. He has an underlying health condition. He has to insulate his window with books because it's so cold. They wouldn't give him his winter clothes for the longest time. He can't meet with his lawyers. They gave him a laptop, but he can't type on it because they glued all the keys down. It's, the treatment that he is receiving there is abhorrent. And then this judge has the nerve to say, oh, well, we can't extradite him because, United States prisons are so oppressive, but we're going to keep him in the exact same conditions that caused this mental health crisis any damn way. And it's so the hypocrisy, the fact that people aren't talking about that more is strange to me, because that is just so, again, like Steve says, we live in a fucking cartoon. That's it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and what adds to that too is that there is some mainstream media coverage of what's happening to Assange, and it's been done by Tucker Carlson, but people
on Fox News of all places,
right? Oh. And he's actually, turned over a leaf, and he's convinced now that Julian Assange is a political prisoner, somebody who should be free, and he's had guests on to discuss that, but people get so hung up on the fact that of the Tucker Carlson brand, and that he's just totally
well, listen, he is a douche canoe.
He is, but he's not
a douche canoe, but
he's,
douche canoes can get things right.
Right.
And the thing is, I'm glad that he's speaking out. The same thing we see it on the Hill as well, where they call for Julian Assange to be pardoned. So
And no, I think.
Are you talking about Rising?
Yeah,
Because
Rising.
I have beef with Rising. Crystal Ball, if you're watching this, you still need to apologize for the episode that you guys did where you repeated propaganda smears about Julian Assange and laughed at the situation in which he found himself at that time, because that was gross. And I really want to like Rising, I really do, but that was unacceptable. And the fact that and it's not like we haven't talked about it or called on them to at least address it, because they sat there and laughed at the dude and repeated the smears about him not cleaning up after his cat and whatever the bullshit was, and they have never apologized for that, and it's gross. And I appreciate the fact that they sometimes have guests on now to talk about Julian Assange. There's been a couple of times that they, like the panel that they did not that long ago, was pretty terrible. But yeah, like that was just gross. And so I have beef with them. I'm just saying, like, apologize, at least address it. Come on. It was gross what they did. It was gross.
They won't. They don't
I know
give
they
a
won't.
shit.
No, I know.
They needed a story for their show that day, and that was that. And
yeah,
it's like, you don't hold a candle to Assange, and anybody with a modicum of seriousness to their political discourse and understanding of politics will be able to see that. It's like, I know who Crystal Ball is. I don't know her, but I don't need to know somebody to judge what they're saying about somebody else. What they say is what they say. And especially if they're putting it on their show, then they must be, I assume, serious about it. And so, yeah, I don't disagree with you, Misty. I think calling for an apology is right, but they never will. They don't care.
no. And I don't even know if I would believe them if they did, because again, I'm skeptical of everybody. And the fact that, they are funded by The Hill, and, they both have a certain background, and yeah, I'm skeptical. Like, I get that people want to like them, and listen, they do some good stuff. Like, they cover some important things in a real way sometimes. And like, that's, cool. I'll give them credit when they do those things. But you really have to be very careful. And just, I think a lot of the problem that I see is that people latch on to certain sources, and then, like we see with politicians, they become above, like, you can no longer criticize them. Kyle Kalinske has a lot of those people. If you criticize Kyle Kalinske in any way, which I do frequently because his coverage on Assange has been weak, to say the best, or like to say, like, that's like best case scenario. So yeah, but if you call him out on Twitter or something, dear God,
well,
it's unbelievable.
He called me out, but he didn't tag me. So,
well,
he's a
but yeah,
little,
I just wish people.
I've seen Kyle Kalinske do his work. I've never met him firsthand, but I've seen Twitter and what it can devolve into. And I pity the person that says, hey, let's make Twitter awesome and fun for everybody. That's one big cesspool.
Right. Yeah. I guess to me, I just wish people would stop. It's the hero worship, whether it's of content creators or politicians, or no. And that's,
don't do it. Don't do it. You'll be disappointed. Don't
yeah.
hero worship me. Don't hero worship any of us.
No.
Because I'm a human
being. For
the
love of God, no.
And I got my fair share of flaws. I got my fair share.
Yes.
I actually have a tattooed on my neck, "No Heroes," which is something I agree with. It also comes from a song by this hardcore band called Converge. But yeah, I absolutely agree. No hero worship.
No.
I don't think that means, if there's a politician you support or you really agree with, that you shouldn't agree with them or support them. I'm just saying, don't worship other human beings. They're just other human beings.
If you're going to be hero worshiping, go to the realm of science fiction or fantasy, because guess what? Those characters are superhuman in their own right. And no matter what genre you read in, fine, go ahead, read. It's okay to hold those individuals to a standard because they're written that way. They're supposed, but they're extraordinary individuals, but it's in a realm of fiction or fantasy or science fiction. But when it comes down to human beings, we are all flawed. We all make mistakes. Look, is Julian Assange a journalist hero? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm pretty sure he has his own failures and flaws as well.
For sure.
For sure. But you know what? He shouldn't be tortured. He shouldn't be behind bars. Edward Snowden, he's a hero for doing the right thing, exposing the NSA, but he should not be exiled. He should be with his wife and his child. He should be there. Same thing for all the content creators on social media, kind of bring it all right back to full circle again with censorship. No content creator, be they Status Quo, Tim Black, Nico House, Convo Couch, Progressive Soapbox, Political Vigilante, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, or Brianna Joy Gray, no one should be censored. No one should be having any of their accounts suspended or anything like that. Okay. And at the same time too, I don't want to see that happen to libertarians or Republicans either, or conservatives. I don't want to see that. And how do we solve that situation? Well, number one, definitely Julian Assange cannot be extradited. Number two, people got to get out there on the streets to lead out, call for a general strike. And then number three, we have to really make sure that for the internet, because it's going to be part of our livelihoods, no matter what, it has to be a public utility. This has to be available to all. And we can't have this antiquated system anymore. And we have to reform our entire political system. But it's up to the people to say no more. It's up to the people to stand up. And I think we will get down that road. But how many more good people have to pass away or get hurt or be homeless before enough say no more? Because I think enough people have died. Already we've gotten past 500,000 dead with COVID-19 here in the United States alone. Almost more than 500,000 dead. I think enough is enough. People need to get out there and say no more.
Well, and that's what really makes me angry about the progressives is that especially with force the vote, people are dying. Literally, people are dying because we still have a for-profit healthcare system, and it's not like we don't know that this is what's happening. Our healthcare, you can't even call it a healthcare system. But it's like a death care. It's ridiculous that this is acceptable. Again, going back to my point from earlier, the fact that we just go along with the fact that in the United States of America in the year 2021, we still can't make sure that everybody can go to a doctor if they need to. Are you kidding? Like, that's just something you're going to take and just accept, like, that's okay and it's normal and that's the best we can do and that's just the way it is. Fuck off. Like, this is the United States of America. Like, we're supposed to be super cool, right? Like, we can do anything. We can bomb countries within like 30 seconds of not having a conversation about it. But we can't get people healthcare, really?
At least Israel, with our $3.8 billion a year to them,
they get healthcare.
Yeah, they get universal healthcare and education.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But you can't be critical of them, and you can't have SNL make a joke about them.
Right.
Yeah. But that's that's not acceptable. You deserve better. You deserve better. You deserve to be able to go to a doctor whenever the fuck you need to. You live in the United States of America in the year 2021. Every other major country on earth has taken care of this. It's like a done deal, been done, everything. I mean, a lot of them are now trying to re-privatize their shit because we are constantly going to have to be fighting that battle, I think. But yeah, come on, that should not even be almost okay with anybody in this country ever. I don't know why we've allowed ourselves to get beaten down to the point where that's just what we accept for ourselves. It's so sad to me. It really is.
I think part of it comes from the fact that we've been not so much promised it, but it's been dangled in front of us for so long. And it's kind of like we accept the dangling and the grabbing for it, but not being able to reach it, and just saying to ourselves, well, that's the way life is. And
I think one of the problems is that corporate media and our political establishment did a phenomenal job in convincing Americans this is how it has to be, this is how things are, They'll do incremental change by giving us some crumbs here and there, nothing full. And it's always team red versus team blue. And look, I hate saying
And,
this.
and,
Not like Democrat,
all change by definition is incremental.
you know, stop voting for team red and team blue.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to vote Republican or vote Democrat, I mean, all I'm going to say is, okay, well, if that's what you believe in, but I'm going to think, wow, you're a really good puppet. And I can't support Democrats, and I'm sure as heck not going to support Republicans. So I'm going to use my vote to support third parties. And that's what I'm going to do, because I can't in good conscience support the Democrats, especially after what they've done now, especially in this year of 2021. I mean, this has cemented my full investment. So if that means if there's a libertarian on the ticket, or a green, or moving for People's Party, or socialist, or non-affiliate, I'm voting for said candidate over Democrat or Republican.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people need to get into that mentality of walking out away from the two-party system and turning off corporate news. Now, again, does corporate media occasionally get it right here and there? Yeah, sometimes, but it's a rare scene. Again, corporate media is supposed to convince you that the whole entire system is running fine, it's running in a correct manner, and don't challenge it. When in reality, we need to challenge it.
Well, yeah, again, it's state-run propaganda. It's run by corporations. Corporations also run our government. It is state-run propaganda, and they will always control. And yes, you're right. They do get some things right every now and then, but they get the things right that they are able to get right without making any waves or anything like that. The things it's been approved, you know, and they'll like dangle those little things out here and there and spend 92% of the time propagandizing the shit out of their viewers and lying to them and manipulating them and misinforming them. And I mean, y'all, Russiagate for 4 years at the top of their lungs. That's all Rachel Maddow, that is all she talked about.
That was her bread and butter. And that's why I always say on the show, like when I'm citing an article from RT America, I say, hey, don't tell Rachel Maddow this.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that's why I really do think that, you know, mainstream media is one of the biggest threats that we face. I mean, especially if you start examining the Atlantic Council and the affiliation that they have with Facebook and the way that they work with Facebook. I mean, we have now that Christopher Wray just testified in the Senate that he now wants social media companies to allow like a backdoor to law enforcement agencies and like just allow them to like get in and like check out all of our stuff. And it's like that was testified out loud, like in a Senate, and nobody talks about it. Like nobody's like, what did he just say?
Well,
like they're going to do.
They
what
almost
now?
have that already. When
They do. But this is now just them. It's like, and I hate to like Jimmy Dore it because then people like freak out. But Jimmy Dore used to say about, I forget what it was, but do you think that they're making this okay, like legal now because they want it to be, or because they're already doing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is stuff that they're already doing. They're now like just trying to finesse their way into making it acceptable and okay. Right. As people start to kind of figure out where they're going with it. So yeah, but that was like testified out loud in the Senate. And nobody's talking about the fact that Christopher Wray is asking social media companies and big tech to allow backdoor access to all of our stuff. Everybody. And again, you're right, Jesse. They absolutely are already doing that. But the fact that they're now discussing it out loud and it's not even a blip on the radar is really something.
Yeah. And we also see it too at protests with police confiscating people's phones or
going after the press.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or infiltrating Facebook groups or whatever other social media groups that are planning political events, marches, demonstrations, protests, what have you. And they've been doing that, excuse me, for a long time. But yeah, Misty, I think you're right. I think this is now when we're seeing them in the form of Christopher Wray come out and basically say like, we've been doing, like, without saying it, like, we've been doing this, but
now we want permission.
Yeah. May we continue?
Yeah, yes. And it's that whole, it's easier to apologize for something later than ask permission to do it. And you know what I mean? And that's really what that's what that is. But all of those, yeah, it's bad. We're in a really bad spot, and we're losing. They are legit like destroying the First Amendment in broad daylight right now. Like we're watching it happen over and over and over again in so many ways. I mean, we've talked about many of them throughout the course of this interview. You know, PayPal, Patreon, YouTube, shadow banning, Twitter, doing, you know, it's like this full assault from all directions on the First Amendment and and the First Amendment sounds so, like, again, kind of abstract and broad, but it really is just your right to know, to think, to talk about, to access, to listen to hear. I don't want some entity, government, agency, whatever you want to call it, deciding what information I am allowed to examine. That's terrifying. And that's where we're headed. Like, that's exactly where we're headed. I mean, we're almost there now. It really is. People talk about fighting fascism all the time. This is fascism. This is fascism.
Well, first of all, in order to fight fascism, you need to have a pink hat, and then you need to go ahead and protest in front of Trump Tower. That's how you fight against fascism, folks. Or at least,
and you tweet about it. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah. I think. But here's the thing: there's a difference between right now how people can organize, because I think a lot of people are still suffering from Trump derangement syndrome and think that now that the orange man is gone, everything's back to normal. We're free again, and it's not. Look at what's still being allowed. I mean, a lot of Trump's policies are still being implemented. Mm-hmm. He didn't, and not to mention too, let's not forget this, but it wasn't Trump that got rid of habeas corpus. It was Barack Obama.
That was Barack Obama.
Trump didn't lead us into new wars, but Obama did, from 2 wars to 7. And Barack Obama didn't do anything to hold the corporation.
He expanded spying powers just before leaving office, knowing that Donald Trump was the one getting ready to take over. And
then what happened in 2018 was Nancy Pelosi. What did Nancy do? She also expanded Security Powers Act after screaming from the rooftop that Trump is a threat, but then expanded the Security Powers Act. And
they passed his entire legislative agenda. They barely fought, like, really, if you look at it, they didn't really fight back against him on much of anything of importance. I mean, they put on a good show. She ripped up some papers. That was cool. But the Democrats enabled Trump in nearly every way. How many federal judges did they help him appoint across the country? And many of them were fast tracked. And the whole time they're trying to tell you that the Supreme Court is, hundreds of federal judges across the country they helped him appoint. And legitimately, a lot of them were fast tracked. That's what I'm talking about. It's this theater. It is theater. This is one party. They're owned and operated by the exact same people. There's minor differences here and there as far as like what kind of industries. Like big oil tends to favor Republicans a little bit more than Democrats, but they still donate to Democrats, and Democrats still help big oil. But there is a little bit but it's really of degree, not kind. They're all owned by the exact same people. They're working for the exact same agenda. It's just theater. They play off each other. They pretend to bicker about certain things in certain ways. And the whole time they're working hand in hand. That's why you see something like a Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is not that powerful, but because Democrats want to have a fall guy, he becomes that person for them. And, he's the big bad. He's kind of the Trump. He's somebody that they can use to justify never getting anything done because, Joe Manchin he just won't vote for it. And it's all theater. All of this stuff is theater. And I wish more people would start to recognize that, because I mean, Kit, you say you're going to vote for a third party. I think that's it's a great option. If I vote, I would vote third party. But I'm really like just done with electoral politics at least on a federal level. I mean, I like to kind of make that clear because I do think that on a local level, especially with like ballot measures and stuff like that, you can maybe see some impact. And it depends. It varies because a lot of local politics are unbelievably corrupt too. So yeah, but I think that, we really just have to start thinking outside the box. We cannot, it's not, and a third party, again, great idea. Honestly, I'm very skeptical that it can work. I wish it would, but in the system that we currently have, a third party is screwed. It's hosed from the get-go, and there's no reforming this system. There's no way for us to combat the unfairness about the way third parties are treated. They're always going to change the rules and manipulate things so that we can't make any progress in that. So yeah, to me, we really have to start. And again, you're right, general strike. But before we even do that, we need to start really focusing on mutual aid. We need to start getting some organization as far as that goes, because if we're going to general strike, we're going to need to take care of each other. And so we need to have those kind of mechanisms and systems in place so that we have the ability to feed people if we do have a general strike and it comes down to that. And it could be drawn out. Like it could be, I mean, we never know what a general strike will do and how it'll work and how long it'll take. And so we need to make sure that we have the ability to, take care of people who are maybe participating in that in some way that they would then not be able to, like we all need to start growing food and community gardens and learn how to sew and fix things. And, if you can't find a local mutual aid group to like help or volunteer with, start one because we're going to need it.
And I think an important thing with a general strike is to be ready to defend ourselves against state violence, because they're going to use it. They use it at protests already, as in when the NYPD drove their SUVs into a crowd of people during George Floyd protests.
Or when Seattle was using chemicals that are outlawed by the Geneva Convention
right.
on protesters. So, I mean, that's something that, again, we're going to have to, like...
The cops taking the skin off their rubber bullets so they would hit harder, make more damage. Yeah, I think we have to be ready for that. And I bring this up whenever I feel like it's germane, but I don't think there's enough conversation about that. It's a lot of, we can have sit-ins and occupy offices and things are going to change substantially, but the state's not going to relinquish anything without violence on its part. And so we have to be ready to defend ourselves. And what does that mean? It means something specific for me, but I can't say that it's the same for everybody else. And, the state is essentially a huge instrument of centralized violence. And we have to realize that first and foremost if and when we do enter a general strike, because if they're going to use lethal force at just protests, think about what they're going to do with regard to general strikers who are, essentially shutting down the capitalist machine of this country. And I am not a fan of violence, but I'm not a pacifist. And I think it's a reality that we need to deal with, or at least have a conversation about if we're serious about changing where we are now, because substantial change is not going to come without the state resorting to some kind of violence against us.
I think it's important to point out that they're already committing violence. I mean, not providing healthcare to its citizens is violence. Not providing a living wage to the citizens of its country, that's violence. Are you kidding me? Look at the imperialism and the war and destruction and chaos and coups and drone strikes. And I mean, come on, like yes, they are very violent. They are very violent. I just don't know if we can out-violent the state. So,
But
I
it's
remain.
I don't think it's so much about being more violent than them. It's about being prepared to defend ourselves against them so that we're not armless and getting sniper shot in the street by paramilitarized cops. That's what I'm saying. Because I think it can come to that. It's probably going to come to that at some point. And again, I'm not stipulating that anybody do anything specific. I'm just saying that that's at least a conversation we need to have because, as we've seen again and again, the state resorts to violence, whether it's at home or abroad, with the forever wars. So,
Yeah.
I think that conversation often gets lost, though. So, I just try to bring it up whenever possible.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's up to the people. Again, as I said before, to organize and say enough is enough. And I think there is a chance for real change for politics, especially at the state, maybe even at the county or municipal level, so that we can build from the bottom up. And we have to look at that alternative. And it's not over yet. And I think so long as people continue to be vocal, people continue to speak out and call out against censorship and so much else, we can get a better future. It's up to the people to fight for it. That's the fact.
Yeah. And I've been saying that about the Julian Assange case. It really is going to take mass public pressure. That's the only thing that is going to, you cannot like appeal to Joe Biden's better angels. That's just not a thing that exists. So it's going to take, and this is for anything we want to accomplish, it really is going to take mass public pressure. It is going to take people coming together, working together for a common goal. Yeah, that's the only, because we really are so many more than they. We have the numbers. The people have the numbers. We just need to learn to be more strategic and use and stop like letting them divide us and keep us focused on things that really don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. I mean, at some point they will, but until we address the just ridiculous corruption of the system in which we find ourselves and our government. And I mean, we can't, those conversations can't even be had yet. Like, we need to figure out how to make this country work for everybody, for the people, fair and just. I know that's, obviously there's no perfection, but the fact that it is in the position that, like the state that it's in, which is horrendous. We're a failed state, y'all. Like we're poisoning the people of Flint. We're like we've talked about, Joe Biden is like means testing relief aid for a pandemic. And, we're bombing people all over the place illegally and occupying who knows how many countries illegally. And we're, torturing journalists, and we're in a really bad spot. So until we start dealing with some of that stuff, like the differences of opinion that we have and the fights that we have, I mean, to me, it's just, I can't even start to think about that stuff yet until we really address the problem, the core problem. And, there it is. I just don't know how we can move forward until we deal with that,
My hope is with the people. I got to keep
Yes.
hope alive. And I'll keep it with the people. Sooner or later, enough will step up and say no more. And
I hope so.
And I think that's going to be the case, because we've seen it happen in history where the people step up and say no more. And I believe that we can make it happen. It's just enough. We need more people.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
In politics, we just can't have them have coveted Senate or House seats or even an office of presidency. It's going to be everyone's required, because in a democracy, in order for a democracy to flourish, it requires continuous public participation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So listen, I know you have another interview coming up, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. But can you just tell everybody how they can help Hard Lens Media fight this YouTube bullshit, where they can support you guys at, where they can find all of your work, all of those things. Because like I said earlier, we really have to support independent media however we can. If you can't donate or become a Patreon or whatever the F you want to, like premium member, Rockfins, whatever, just sharing the work of independent journalists that you like and support really does help. So yeah, however you can support independent media, please do that. But yeah, Kit, please tell us where that we can find everything.
So here's, we have our website, www.hardlensmedia.com. That's HARDLENSMEDIA.com. Hard like a rock, lens like a camera lens, media.com. We have our YouTube channel is still up, and one of our scheduled videos did get uploaded, but that was already uploaded before our suspension happened. I mentioned it on Steve Poikman's show, but our channel is still suspended. You could still subscribe and watch our channel. Our channel is still monetized, thank goodness. But you be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hard Lens Media on YouTube. We do have a backup channel as well called HLM, which we'll post on Twitter when we go live. We also have our Rockfin channel. Be sure to subscribe to us on Rockfin. It will really help us out. We do appreciate any subscribers, people who help us out build that channel. We want to make that channel different than our YouTube channel. We have our Discord, Hard Lens Media. We're on Twitter. And on our Twitter page, pinned to our Twitter page, is what happened to our YouTube channel. And we ask people to politely retweet at Team YouTube, at YouTube creators, and say, hey, you made a mistake, reinstate and remove Hard Lens Media suspension, and do that specifically. If you can't become a Patreon supporter or support us on Streamlab or subscribe to us on Rockfin, just share our content online and social media, and more importantly, retweet that out, telling Team YouTube creators to remove our suspension. We need as many people to speak out about this, because it's just not Hard Lens Media that has to deal with this. It's other independent media content creators that are dealing with this. And I don't want to see that happen to them. Our channel is live Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we upload Rockfin content later in the evening, 3 times a week.
Right on. Well, thank you so much,
Excellent.
Kit. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, I really do appreciate you taking the
No,
time. I know that you
all
know,
of you.
you really
I'm
have
so
been on like everybody's show, so it's like been fun watching you. But I know this is important, and you know, that's why you're doing it, because it really is like, this really is something that we need to continue to talk about, because it is just going to continue to get worse.
Actually, I'm just really glad to be on your show. Any show that's going to have me on, I'm very happy. I would love to be part of this conversation. I had a lot of fun. To be continued, and I do hope that perhaps maybe we all meet very soon. You're more welcome to have Chicago style pizza. And please, no matter what, that's all I'm going to say. Just please be safe. Thank you for having me on this show. I really had a lot of fun. This was a great program, and I can't wait to send me the link.
Absolutely.
This video
Of course.
so I can promote it on our YouTube channel right away.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Great.
Okay, so our guest today has been Kit Cabello. He is the host of Hard Lens Media. Please check him out at all the links that he mentioned. We will put all of those links also in the show notes for everybody, so that you can have easy access to his work. They are doing amazing things over there, so support their work however you can. And yeah, thanks again, Kit, for coming on, and we will catch everybody next time. Thanks, guys.